I've never been the kind of guy to share my problems, let alone something like this on a public forum. But here I am. Honestly, I don't know what else to do. I feel like I need to say it to someone, and you guys are here. Maybe you can offer some advice or at least understand. A little background. I'm in my early 30s now, and I've been married to a woman named Sarah for 12 years. She was beautiful, smart, and we always seemed to have a normal life together. 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, decent careers. I thought we were happy. But now, looking back, I realize I was blind to a lot of things. Every day seemed the same. We were walking through life, and I had no idea that my wife was keeping secrets from me. It all started off small, subtle, almost imperceptible changes that I tried to brush off. But after a while, they started stacking up, each one adding weight to the growing suspicion in the back of my mind. At first, it was the late nights. I'd come home from work to find her still glued to her phone, typing away, a slight tension in the air. When I'd ask her about her day, she'd smile, but it was never quite the same smile I'd seen before. It felt rehearsed, almost like she was holding something back. And don't get me started on the sudden business trips that seemed to pop up at the most inconvenient times. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, work gets stressful. But there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't place. A certain distance. Then came the phone calls. I remember one night, she was in the living room, and I was in the kitchen, just getting a drink. I overheard her talking to someone, her voice low, but the words still carried through the quiet house. I couldn't make out everything, but I heard enough to make my stomach drop. She said something about making sure everything's set up for the weekend, and don't worry, he won't find out. I brushed it off. Maybe she was talking about a work event, right? But deep down, I knew. Something wasn't adding up. It wasn't until I started noticing little things that I couldn't ignore anymore. Small gestures, tiny inconsistencies. She'd glance at her phone whenever I was nearby, quickly turning it face down when I came into the room. The tone of her voice had changed too, distant, colder. And the worst part? She stopped looking at me the way she used to. That warmth, that connection we had once shared, gone. But it was Thanksgiving that really tipped me over the edge. The whole family was at our house, celebrating, eating, talking. It should have been a joyful time, but instead, I felt like a stranger in my own home. We were all gathered around the table, and I was chatting with my brother-in-law in the kitchen when I heard her voice from across the room. She was sitting at the table with her parents, and I didn't think much of it at first. But then the words hit me like a ton of bricks. I can't keep pretending. You know it's true. They're all his, she said, the words so casual, so cold. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't even need to hear more to know what she was talking about. My kids. Our kids. They're all his. You've known this, right? She repeated. I couldn't breathe. Everything in me told me to walk away, to get out of that room, but I couldn't. I stood there, frozen in the kitchen, unable to process the words that were hanging in the air. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront her right then? Should I make a scene? But no, I couldn't. I needed proof. I needed to know for sure. That night, after everyone had left, I finally found what I was looking for. It was an envelope left carelessly on the counter. At first, I didn't recognize it. But as I reached for it, I saw what was inside: DNA test results. My heart sank. It was a slap in the face. Right there in black and white, the evidence I needed. The kids weren't mine. I stared at those papers for what felt like hours. My mind raced, but I couldn't make sense of it. How long had this been going on? How had I been so blind? I didn't know what to do. I was furious, heartbroken, shattered. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. She wasn't worth the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation. I was done. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't tell Sarah where I was going or why. I didn't need to. I had already made my decision. As I walked out the door, I could feel her eyes on me, but I didn't turn back. I didn't say a word. I left without any explanation. And I didn't look back. But she didn't let it go. She called, texted, showed up at places I was staying. She begged for me to come home, to forgive her. But I couldn't. The betrayal was too deep, too painful. She had lied to me for years, and I didn't know who she was anymore. I disappeared. I sold everything. I took whatever money I had left and started over from scratch. I didn't want to be found, didn't want to hear from anyone. For the next 10 years, I bounced between cities working on my own terms. I built something for myself. And as the years passed, the anger and heartbreak turned into something else, motivation. And in time, I became something I never imagined, a billionaire. 10 years passed, a decade of building, of healing, of proving to myself that I was more than what she had made me feel. More than just a man who had been betrayed. I had built an empire. I had risen from the ashes of my past, and now I was unrecognizable, not just to her, but to the world. But that's why I came back. I didn't come back to get closure. I didn't come back for revenge. At least, not the kind she might have expected. I came back because there was something I had to show her. Something I needed to prove, not to her, but to myself. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to scream, or cry, or even demand an explanation. No, I had grown past all that. But I wanted her to see me, see the man I had become without her. The man who had learned to thrive, not in spite of her betrayal, but because of it. I returned on Thanksgiving, the same holiday where everything had gone wrong, the day I had discovered the truth. And I walked into that house like a ghost from the past. No one recognized me at first, no one except for her. Sarah was at the table, talking to her parents, her face frozen in a smile, the way it always had been. But as soon as I walked into the room, she froze. Her eyes widened, and for the first time in years, I saw real fear in her eyes. Fear and confusion. The kids, now teenagers, didn't even know who I was. They glanced at me for a moment and then quickly turned away. But Sarah, her face drained of color, couldn't look away. You're back," she stammered. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, at the woman who had destroyed my world, who had taken everything from me. The moment hung in the air. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I stopped her with a single look. I didn't need to explain. I didn't need to say a word. She already knew. I didn't stay long. I didn't need to. I had already won. I walked out of that house without a single word, and the last thing I heard was her voice calling my name, pleading. But it was too late. She had lost me for good, and I wasn't going to let her back into my life. Not now. Not ever. The years that followed were quiet. Sarah reached out a few times, letters, emails, phone calls, but I never responded. It wasn't about punishing her. It wasn't about making her suffer. It was about me, about protecting myself from the woman who had once claimed to love me. I didn't need her. I didn't need anyone. I had built my life on my own, and that was more than enough. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you have to value yourself. No matter how much someone may hurt you, no matter how deep the betrayal cuts, you have to keep going. You have to find your way back to yourself. And sometimes, that means walking away from the people who never truly saw you. For those of you out there who are going through something similar, please know this. You are stronger than you think. The pain will fade, and eventually, you'll realize that you don't need anyone's approval to be whole. You don't need anyone to define your worth. It took me a long time to figure that out, but I got there. And now, I'm the person I've always wanted to be. Someone who doesn't look back, someone who doesn't let the past define them. The best revenge? It's living a life so far beyond what they could ever imagine. And trust me, I'm living proof of that.